Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of my movie reviews. And this is a movie that I originally wanted this to be the first episode about, but unfortunately, I never got the chance to do it because I seen the movie at least a week and a half ago. I already watched it Monsters University last week. So unfortunately, I never got the chance to actually watch the film. Review the film, sorry about that. So I never got the chance to do review of the movie, but now's my chance to do it first because I'm going to be leaving this Friday for my grandpa's 50th anniversary. So I might as well get this out of the way, so let's get started. The movie I'm talking about is a highly anticipated superhero film, and to be quite honest, I am a fan of superhero movies. He's in that. And I have seen lots of good ones in the past, mostly like Marvel films like Avengers, Iron Man 3, and I've also seen some non-Marvel hero films that I like. Like, for example, I've also seen like the Dark Knight movies. He's especially some non-DC and non-Marvel superhero films like The Incredibles and much more. But now DC has come back with a new superhero film, this time starring one of the most iconic superhero films of all times, Superman. And yes, the movie that we're talking about is Man of Steel. Now, to be fair, I was excited for this mostly because it has Christopher Nolan as the producer, but I was disappointed that he's not the director of the film. Instead, it's Zack Synder, who previously directed films like Watchmen, 200, and even Legend of the Guardians. So let's ask this. Can Christopher Nolan try to make this movie as epic as his Dark Knight movies? Or does Zack Synder completely ruined it? Well, you're gonna find out. Alright, so let's talk about the story. The story's about this. If you're a fan of Superman, you could probably easily predict the story in this one. If you're not Superman, you can still kind of predict it. And from the way you can tell what I'm saying, you probably might say, wait, is the story really bad? Well, you're going to find out. So the story's about, starts off in Krypton, where basically Superman's father, and by the way, I forgot the names of Superman's father and mother, so please excuse me for not saying it, but I'm just going to call them Superman's mother and father. Anyways, Superman's father, Bernard, talks to the High Counselors of Krypton now about a situation involving the end of the world, involving their planet Krypton could blow up into pieces. And while he's talking to them, General Zod and his allies come in to say that he has taken over Krypton and has killed one of the High Counselors of the planet. And so the only way Superman's father could do this is to do one thing: go to the center of Krypton, take the source power of all the babies and much more in that place, take it back to his home with his wife, and then give that power, and then give the skull-looking thing to his son as his power. Now, in the original comics, they mostly explained that Superman was born with powers. But here, though, they actually explain that Superman got his powers from the source power that his father got, that his father took in that to save his race. And so the husband and wife decided to send him to the Earth with this power in that to give him a destiny. And also to protect the last remaining person of their life forms of Krypton. However, General Zod decides to come and tries to stop the whole situation, convince Superman's mother to keep him with him to save Krypton. Unfortunately, by the time right after they shortly released it, General Zod tries to shoot it down, but unfortunately, some of the High Counselors stopped the missile and then stopped General Zod. And so what they did before Krypton blew up, they punished them in a situation worse than death. Oh my god, fucking hiccups. I don't know where these hiccups always come from. Alright, man. Anyways, So they send him, instead of sending him to a situation worse than death, they send him to the Phantom Zone, which according to them is worse than death. And very shortly after, Krypton already starts to blow up in like lava, volcanoes, ash clouds. And then as the mother looks out and says her final words, the whole planet blows up into pieces, and then Superman goes to the Earth, and then from there, he has to figure out what his destiny is. Now, so you could probably guess by saying this, like, the story might sound interesting at first, but to be quite honest, it is predictable to me quite honestly. And it's not because I'm a Superman fan. Even from a movie standpoint, I could easily predict some moments in the story. You know? And so the story, I think, is one of the weakest flaws of this film. Well, if you want to know why, here's why I say that. Well, I will admit, though, the intro, despite it being slow, it was explainable. It definitely did explain about a bit of Krypton. You finally get to saw what Krypton looked like, and you finally actually find out how Superman really got his powers, that he wasn't even born with them. He was born as a regular Krypton type of human, but then he got the strength of a superhero, because his father stole a skull-looking thing that added in all his powers into Superman. And I'll admit that's really interesting, because even though it is a bit slow though, it definitely does explain a bit of Superman. However, it just gets really annoying most namely after that part's over. After that part, you got Superman as like a fisherman, and then he saves some people from a burning down tower or something in the middle of the ocean. And then he falls down into the ocean sleeping like this. And then he actually gets flashbacks of his past. Now, normally this is pretty much common in some films, because flashbacks of their childhood create some character development. And I'll admit they did develop Superman in this story. But what I find annoying though about the flashbacks is that, unlike the Dark Knight movies, where the flashbacks start off with Batman as a child, they slowly show him starting from a child, of what he did as a child, to becoming the Batman that we know and love. In Man of Steel, though, however, here's what they actually did. This becomes a very repetitive pattern. So if you don't know what it is, here's the pattern. Present, past. 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 Okay. I just gotta calm down for a sec. I just gotta calm down. Anyways, so yeah, you pretty much see what I mean in that instead of just doing the usual child to the adult, there's like the Dark Knight displayed very well. Instead, they made it very repetitive. And what makes it worse is that each flashback plus each past and present scene keeps swapping every 5-ish or so minutes. Yes. And the Dark Knight, however, they didn't even do that. It's like I said, they started with Batman as a child, to the Batman we know and love, and that didn't really last very long. Either. It only took like at least, well, I don't really remember much of the film, to be honest, because I did like it. I'd say that the Batman thing took at least, like, the whole flashback from child to adult Batman took only at least 10 minutes to explain, and it's not even repetitive. In Man of Steel, it gets really repetitive and annoying, even though it is part of Superman's character development. We'll get to more about Superman later. Now, the other problem about the story I have is that while the first part is interesting, the second part does kind of get a little bit either bored. Well, pretty much it becomes three things depending on how you see the second act. Either annoying, repetitive, or pretty much just boring. The reason why I actually say that is because throughout most of the movie, there's almost not a single silent moment in the film. It got almost nothing but constant dialogue for almost the entire movie. Like seriously, there's barely any silent moment in the film. Well, to create a dramatic moment or anything like that. Yeah, true, there are a couple silent moments in the film, but the problem though, is that they only last like a few seconds long anyway, so they pretty much just don't count. And because there's nothing but constant dialogue, you just get pretty annoyed by it because you just want to have a silent moment to calm down a bit. Now, I don't have a major problem with films having lots of dialogue, because I don't really have a problem with films having lots of dialogue, though I also do want to have some bit of silent ones, because silent moments create some dramatic moments, heartwarming pretty much heartwarming dramatic moments, let's just say that. But here though, there's barely any silent movement in the film and nothing but constant dialogue, and it gets pretty annoying though after a long time, after some time. And trust me when I say you will get annoyed by it quickly. Yeah. But does that mean I hate the story entirely and it's a bad story? Not really, actually, no. There are some likes about the story I do like about. I do like the beginning of how they explain how Superman got his superpowers. And the second thing I like is that even though the whole entire flashbacks switching back and forth every few minutes or so does get pretty annoying and repetitive, it does create some character development of Superman. It does explain what he has done during his childhood on Earth. And I do like that, though. I do like that. And the third thing I do like about it is actually the third act of the film. While the first act is a bit slow, it is developed, but the second one is kind of a bit annoying. The third act is when the action-packed stuff really comes in. And it gets action-packed, total fun, and visually appealing. That's what I was trying to say. So pretty much, the story's mostly a mixed bag. It does have a lot of flaws, but it's not really a bad story. Like, this isn't really the worst story for a superhero film I've ever seen. I mean, this isn't really one of the best superhero stories I've ever seen or heard of, but it's not really a bad story. Now let's talk about my likes and dislikes on the visuals and the settings. Now, I do have one major like about this. I do have one major like about it is the visuals. If there's one thing that most people remember from this film, even in other superhero movies, they'll always remember the visuals. And let me tell you, just like any other superhero movie out there, the visuals in Man of Steel was just awesome. From the really fast-paced flying scenes, to the action fighting scenes, to villains getting destroyed, and much, much more. It gets really action-packed. Now, the only problem about the visuals I do have, though, is that despite being in the beginning of the film a bit, they don't really appear that much in the second half. They don't really appear that much in the second act of the movie, because most of the time, like I said, it's mostly dialogue and nothing really special goes on. But in the third act, that's when the visuals go overboard. It gets action, and like I said, the third act is action-packed, virtually appealing to look at, and so entertaining to watch the fight between General Zod and Superman. It gets really a lot of fun to watch. However, if there is maybe one major flaw I do have with the visuals and settings, it's mostly the settings. With the exception of Krypton and the spaceships that Superman discovers, the rest is pretty much the settings that we've seen in almost every other movie. Like, for example, one of the scenes takes place at Atlantis, and to be quite fair, I don't know how many times I've seen films where had scenes that takes place in ice and snow lands like Atlantis or the North Pole or anything like that. And besides, it's like I said, I don't know how many times I've seen some scenes in movies that involved ice and snow. The other movies I definitely know for a fact where the whole setting is like that is either the Ice Age films or The Last Airbender, where most of the scenes in that film were nothing but ice and snow. It's not really interesting to look at. Now, to be fair though, in most movies they usually have Iceland type scenes that have virtually appealing buildings and that built along with it. And even though it's the same ice and snow scenes we've seen 4, at least they create some originality with them. But in Man of Steel, it's just the North Pole, with just some government buildings around it. That's pretty much it. It's nothing really new entirely, in that it's been done many times before. The other thing I have a problem with is the city themselves. Is the city itself. Like, basically it's the city, the cell. I mean, to be fair, it's just the same city we see in almost every film, even superhero movies for that matter. They don't take you to so different villages ever. Well, then again, they did, but the problem about that is that those other scenes are barely in the films at all. They're only in there for I'd say at least 5 minutes max. That's because the only settings that the film focuses on the most is the spaceship, since New York City, where the Daily Planet is, there's at the North Pole and Krypton. That's pretty much it. The other scenes are just barely in the film at all, so they don't count. The visuals are not really some of the best. The visuals are still good here, but there's nothing really new about it that can keep me. Well, basically, the visuals are actually good, are still good in this movie, but there's nothing really new to impress me, or just has never been done in any other superhero movie before. Now let's talk about the characters. And let me tell you, even though the story isn't one of the worst, isn't the best, the characters are by far the weakest part of the whole film, in my opinion. And I'll be quite honest, there are a few characters that are likable, that I do like in the film, but the rest I find either just pointless, or barely in the film at all, or pretty much one-dimensional characters. So just to be honest, let's start with the characters I like the most. Let's start with the one that I like the most in the movie, General Zod. Oh, and by the way, I don't know any of the actors' names in this, so please excuse me for not knowing the name, so I'm sorry. Anyways, for the General Zod character, with the actor's performance, General Zod is actually a pretty good menacing villain, but it's not really the best acting for a villain I've ever heard of, to be honest. General Zod is actually a well-developed character, and we actually know that he wants to become a dictator, and the fact that he wants to protect his world order on Krypton and wants to rebuild it back. He is a well-developed character in my opinion, and I actually liked him a lot more because he's a threatening villain. Which pretty much makes him one of those types of villains that you would just love to hate. Then there's Superman, who's pretty much, which I already mentioned, he is well developed because of the annoying flashbacks, and also because of the intro of the movie. And because he's well developed, and what I like about the visuals also that goes with Superman is that the visuals show how powerful Superman really is thanks to his superpowers. And then we also learned from him that he wasn't used to the Earth's gravity and the hearing sounds, and so after time he got used to it. And I actually like Superman actually. Even though the actor wasn't that good, the character himself, Superman, is still likable. Then we have Superman's father, who is also another character I actually liked in this film. He's not one of the most well-developed characters, however, but he is likable, however, because he appears in the space scenes when Superman interacts with him. He gives him some advice, like as if he's this guy, like as if it's his special conscience, or it's a guiding counselor or whatever. And because that he's very helpful to Superman, especially some of the other characters, he's very likable that he's helpful, and the fact that he's also even he's developed, even though he's not one of the most well-developed characters. But the rest of the characters, I have to say, are either just pointless, bland, or just have no purpose in this film at all. Let's start off with Superman's mother, who, to be quite honest, does not have any character development, and she's barely in the film at all except for only in the intro, so we don't have much time to talk about, so next. Then we have Lois Lane, who I swear to God, I think they hired the wrong actress to do this character. Because Lois Lane in the superhero movies and comics was a black-haired girl, not a redhead. Anyways, Lois Lane is mostly one of those one-dimensional characters where we only know one thing about her and then that's it. Like for example, one or two things though about them and that's it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's what the movie explained. Lois Lane works at the Daily Planet and she's a high-ranked reporter. Okay, and then to me, okay, what else? And that's also pretty much it. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. That's pretty much all they explain about the Lois Lane. All we know about is that she works at the Daily Planet, and the fact that she's high-ranked reporter wants to know about Superman, and that's pretty much it. They don't explain anything about her childhood, but they don't explain about a bit of her past, or how she got to the Daily Planet, or anything else. And keep in mind, the movie's 2.5 hours long, by the way. Okay, so you think with all that time they might be able to do that, but unfortunately no, they had to rush some parts in the film. And another problem I have with Lois Lane is that the relationship between her and Superman I thought was rushed too quickly. Like, the first time they meet face to face was pretty much just basic talk, and Superman explains a bit about himself to her. And then very shortly after, like I'd say at least more than 20 to 30 minutes after, she now starts to fall, to immediately install the Superman. And because of that, I felt that the relationship between the two was a little bit too rushed in that. But that's, I don't know, maybe it is just me, because I have, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just me in there. I mean, because I have seen a lot of other movies that explain the relationship between characters, and sometimes they can either be rushed or maybe they could just be taking some time to make it strong. The other characters, like for example the boss of the Daily Planet, is barely in the movie at all. We don't know much about him besides the fact that he's the boss of the Daily Planet. And some of the other characters like Timmy, just like the boss of the Daily Planet, is barely in the film at all. He has no character development at all, and he's only in the movie like a few times, like at least 5 times or so in the film. And each scene with him only lasts like a few minutes long. So yeah, he's barely in the film at all. The rest of the other characters, like General Zod's allies, and that are not really well-developed characters, and they're only there just to fight Superman, and that's pretty much it. And there are a few others like. Then there's also Superman's step-parents. While the stepfather I will admit is well developed, he's not in the film that much though. He's barely in the movie at all though. Compared to Superman's stepmother. And speaking of Superman's stepmother, she's pretty much the stepmother of Superman, but we don't know much about the character despite the fact that she can be aggressive but very nice at the same time. But even with that, that doesn't really help her make her a memorable character. So pretty much, you know, a few of the characters are likable, and maybe a couple of them may take some time to be likable, but the rest are just either bland, pointless, or just barely in the movie and don't have no purpose or involvement with the main story. So anyways, as a superhero movie, this isn't one of the worst superhero films. This is not one of the best superhero films I've ever seen, but it's not one of the worst, so it's pretty much an average superhero movie. But as a movie by... Oh, hold on. I gotta check the time here. Yeah. Oh. Alright, I have 50 seconds long, so... But as a superhero movie as a movie by itself, produced by Christopher Nolan, this was a huge disappointment. And I want to say to Zack Synder, I blame you for ruining this movie completely. Even though, yeah, your movies have been mixed bag before, they were enjoyable. Also, and before I end the review here, if you ever plan on making a sequel to this film, because the ending looks like it makes a sequel, please let Christopher Nolan direct it, because I think he made the sequel a million times better than this movie.